week, let's bring it home, we learned that J.P. Morgan, the largest Wall Street bank to have emerged from the crisis of 2008, not only unscathed, but enriched and bigger than ever before, announced a whole of its own on its own balance sheet of more than $2 billion, expected to grow, possibly to another $1 billion, some say higher. But not to worry, because cracks on Wall Street can always be fixed with the glue of more easy money, deregulation, and of course, monopoly privilege. Holes can be filled with the endless support of central banks who stand ready to enrich our feudal banking oligopoly at the expense of the systems of government and commerce that built the same wealth that is now being extracted with an ease and efficiency reminiscent of an industrial assembly line. It's kind of the only thing reminiscent of that these days. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of America's largest bank by assets, again, made an appearance on Meet the Press this Sunday. Listen to what he had to say about the $2 billion loss that JP recorded from its risky bets. The loss that turned out not to be the tempest in the teapot that he had previously blown it off as. Take a listen.
It's a question of size. This is not a risk which is life-threatening to JP Morgan. This is a stupid thing that is, that we should never have done, but we're still going to earn a lot of money this quarter. So it isn't like...
Don't you worry. Did you hear that? JP Morgan is still going to earn a lot of money this quarter. Banks are supposed to earn money by helping the economy grow. They make money from that growth. Making money while the rest of the economy suffers isn't earning money. It's extracting it. It's stealing it. And that's a theme we see on both sides of the Atlantic, from bank bailouts in the Eurozone, disguised as bailouts for societies, to the casino capitalism of Wall Street banks disguised as legitimate business. This is just how a bank works. That's what Jamie Dimon wants you to think. We're going to see what Gerald Celente thinks, though. He's founder of Trends Research Institute and publisher of the Trends Journal, and a great antidote on a day like this to the PR coming from a too-big-to-fail bank like J.P. Morgan. Mr. Celente, Gerald Celente, thank you so much. Welcome back to Capital Account. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so let's start with something actually from your Spring Trends Journal. It's a quote from Nomi Prince, who's also been a guest on this show, that says, "Never before has the world experienced such an epic government subsidization scheme to keep private sector gamblers gambling." And she's talking about a trend from the U.S. to Europe to next, she believes, Asia and Latin America. My question to you is, not only have the government the mechanisms of government really been hijacked in order to subsidize the gambling habits and the debt addictions of a new feudal class of banker, but the media, by and large, has painted these attempts as bailouts for the victims. So this may sound like a vague question, but let's just, ask broadly. How would you say this has been allowed to happen?
It's what we wrote back when Henry Paulson, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, was the head of the U.S. Treasury, the Treasury Secretary under Bush. And he devised the scheme of the bailouts, the too big to fails, with his TARP program. And at that time we sent out a trend alert: Wall Street has hijacked Washington. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. By definition, it's called fascism. It's been a takeover. Look at the people who are in charge and who have been in charge, one after another. Whether it was, from the Goldman Sachs gang, the Merrill Lynch mob, the J.P. Morgan Chase crew, one after another, they all inhabit the halls of Wall Street, of Washington, and it's a revolving door. Mm-hmm. There's no democracy in the United States. That's only for little kids. The only representation we get in this country from our senators and congressmen are the people that give them the most money and have the most power. So it's a complete takeover. And not only in the U.S., it's global. I mean, who's the head of the European Central Bank? Oh, Mario Draghi. Where's he from? Son of a gun. Wasn't he the vice chairman of the Goldman Sachs gang over in Europe? Oh, and how about that guy up in Italy, Mario Three-Card Monte? Oh, wasn't he the international advisor for the Goldman Sachs gang?
Yeah.
One after another, Lauren.
Yeah, the list goes on.
So it's very simple.
same thing as the technocrat in Greece that was appointed prime minister. Again, he was a former central banker. The question, though, and I don't want to belabor this, but Gerald, sitting here 3 years after the financial crisis, after this malignant banking tumor built and up and brought down the economy, the worst that we've seen since the Great Depression, how are we sitting here watching Jamie Dimon on TV talk about making more money despite the fact that economies are doing horribly? Is there something in the human psyche, for example, that allows us to be manipulated to allow this kind of pillage right under our noses?
Well, it's all part of the distraction and the entertainment industrial complex. For example, we've just saw over the last few weeks Lloyd Blankfein, you know, the fellow from Goldman Sachs who does, quote, God's work, and burnishing his image on CNBC and Bloomberg. And all the people do, whether it's a matter of taking you to war or robbing you of your savings, the people just sit back passively and let them get raped, whether it's figuratively or literally. And I don't know what it is with it. You know, I had mentioned earlier to Dimitri, I came back from Berlin. Yeah. And it had to be the grandest city I've ever seen before it was bombed, you know, in my vision of it. And much grander than Paris, I spent a lot of time there. And I said to myself, you know, this is the land of, you know, Beethoven, Bach, Goethe, Einstein, one after another. How could these people have let a two-bit freak like Hitler destroy their country? Oh, then people go, well, it was after the Treaty of Versailles. No, no, no. We had one over there in Italy, Mussolini, another two-bit freak. We had a two-bit freak here in America called George W. Bush. Take the people to war against Iraq for weapons of mass destruction that they didn't possess and ties to Al-Qaeda. What is it in the human spirit that allows people to listen to two-bit freaks like Jamie Dimon throw out his baloney that, you know, I didn't know the cause, there's no excuse for it, we didn't know it happened to $2 billion, just like a two-bit freak like John Corzine, who can't find the $1.6 billion. They let them get away with it, and I'll tell you why I believe it. Because people have lost their courage, their dignity, their respect, their integrity, and their passion, and they put up with a load of cheap baloney like guys like Jamie Dimon and that John Queen King, whoever he is, on Meet the Prostitutes, giving him these softball questions and letting him get away with it.
Well, let's listen to what you call this baloney coming from Jamie Dimon and what he gets away with before an interviewer like David Gregory. I want to play a little bit more about what he says about this screw-up that it's being characterized as, this $2 billion loss. Let's take a listen.
So banks either make loans or invest the money in securities. We have a huge securities portfolio. We're a big bank. In fact, the securities portfolio does have an unrealized gain of $8 billion. But in how we manage that portfolio, we did lose $2 billion trading.
So the thing about this is he just makes this sound like, oh, this is just normal banking business as usual. You know, what's left over from the deposits, we invest. But meanwhile, there are tons of reports that have come out from former executives of this unit, for example, saying he was turning this into a profit center, this CIO. He was encouraging huge speculative bets on riskier and riskier products like credit derivatives. Meanwhile, as they were making riskier bets, they were loosening some of the strict standards surrounding risk at the same time. So is this kind of the problem, that this is able to be characterized as, oh, this is just normal banking, this is how a bank works, don't worry about the details, those are complicated, those don't really matter though, this is just banking?
Let's make this really simple, Lauren. These are money junkies. They got a bad habit. They're gamblers. That's all this is. This isn't investment. I'm tired of hearing that word. They're gamblers. These aren't trades, they're gambles. And what happens is, when the money junkies make bad bets, they go to the government, which are their buddies, because it's one club, it's the mafia, the financial mafia. We, the people, have to bail them out. The FDIC, us, we're protecting guys like them, these banks that at one time were just commercial banks. They used to make loans, very vanilla business, and there was, there was enough coverage there if they made a bad bet. They become investment banks are nothing more than casinos that gamble. So this is a lot of baloney. Again, it's just jive talk. And I love it, when they ask the questions, how come no heads rolled on Wall Street? And Dimon says, oh, these bad actors should be punished. Bad actors? Can anybody say criminals?
Yeah.
No.
You're right. You're right. Nobody can say criminal. So how can you go after anybody for a crime if everybody is too afraid to call anybody a criminal or call anything fraud for that matter? When we get back, I want to ask you what should be the fallout from this. We'll have more with Gerald Celente, founder of Trends Research Institute and publisher of the Trends Journal. Still ahead, as the Facebook IPO roadshow continues this week, a co-founder of the social network has changed his relationship status with the United States. We'll give you our 3 cents, but first your closing market numbers.
What drives the world?
The fear-mongering used by politicians.
Who makes decisions?
Considerable breakthrough has already been made.
Who can you trust?
No one who is imbued with a global missionary zeal.
Where are we heading?
State-controlled capitalism is called fascism.
When nobody dares to ask, we do. RT, question more.
You know how sometimes you see a story and it seems so whole and complete, you think you understand it, and then you glimpse something else. You hear or see some other part of it and realize everything you thought you knew, you don't know? I'm Tom Hartman. Welcome to The Big Picture.
Welcome to the Alona Show. You'll get the real headlines with none of the mercy. The problem with the mainstream media today is that they're completely disconnected from the viewers and from what actually matters to those viewers. And so that's why young people just don't watch TV anymore. If they want news, they go online and read it. But we're trying to take those stories that people actually care about and transfer them back to TV.
Welcome back. We're talking about Jamie Dimon and about how the same extractive principles can be seen from a too-big-to-fail, huge, risky trade made by JP Morgan, along with the terms of a bailout in Greece or another debt-strapped Eurozone country. Let's stick to Jamie Dimon, though, for a second, because I want to get to this great op-ed that one of our guests, Jim Rickards, wrote. It's out today. And he says if Jamie Dimon had an ounce of decency, he would resign now, not because his acts were criminal, but because he presides over a corrupt institution that extracts wealth from the many and directs it to the few with no value added, and not even a nod in the direction of the hardworking American victims of this scam. Now, he's talking about JP Morgan's earnings, which Jamie Dimon has been assuring everyone that this London whale trading loss is not life-threatening to. But he's saying, hey, these are a form of theft, those earnings to begin with, theft from savers, from retirees, pursuant to the Federal Reserve's zero interest rate policy. So let's bring Gerald back in because I want to ask him about this notion, both the resignation and the unintended consequences of the Fed. Gerald, does Jim Rickards in this op-ed really get to the point? Is this the real issue, the kind of theft pursuant to the Federal Reserve's policies? And if Jamie Dimon had a shred of integrity, would he resign?
I mean, I can't speak for his integrity. All I could, by their deeds you shall know them. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to what he says, you know, it's just a lot of gibberish going back and forth as I've read over the transcripts of his Meet the Prostitute interview yesterday. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the whole thing is a criminal operation. The banks have been robbing the people in broad daylight, on and on, at every level they could pull it off, and it just keeps going. I love one of his quotes, by the way. He said that President Obama and President Bush, he admires them because they did things in the old-fashioned American way by helping out the system. Old-fashioned American way? How about this trying for the old-fashioned American way? In the old-fashioned American way, there was no such thing as too big to fail. In the old-fashioned American way, we the people are taught that if we fail at something, we go down. But not them. They stay up. And we have to prop them up.
And speaking of propping them up, you can't really talk about propping up the banks without talking about the Fed. Another analysis that has come out from critics post this whole Jamie Dimon scandal is people like Elliot Spitzer and Elizabeth Warren saying he shouldn't sit on the board of the New York Fed, he should resign. Well, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is kind of like, duh, isn't that one of the problems to begin with, that you have someone like Jamie Dimon on the board of the New York Fed? Isn't this kind of the crux of the issue, Gerald, that when you're talking about the Federal Reserve, you're talking about a private-public partnership, or what some might call a cartel?
Well, it's like saying you shouldn't be sitting in on the inner circle of, you know, the mafia, the Gambino family. That's all this is. It's theft. It's theft in front of everyone's eyes. It's not only happening here, it's happening all over the world. I mean, this is very simple. It's not complex. We know why it happened. There was a real estate bubble that was inflated by the Fed following the crash of the dot-com bubble in 2000. After 9/11 hit, they lowered interest rates to 46-year lows. There was a building boom in Ireland, a building boom in Spain, a building boom in Portugal, a building boom in the U.S. The banks kept loaning money to people they shouldn't have loaned it to, kept rebundling the money and making these gambling games, and the whole thing is collapsing. The Federal Reserve, again, you know, this is just a syndicate. It's a financial syndicate, and they whitewash it with respectability. This isn't the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. It's the International Mafia Federation. The whole thing is one big criminal operation, and everyone is afraid to call a spade a spade. Instead, we have to call them financial experts, investment wizards. Look how they bowed down to Jamie Dimon and said how brilliant he was. How brilliant he was. If you're on the inside of the game, you could be brilliant too.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the question becomes, and I know this is a big one, in this situation where we do have these actions going on and being supported, or at least kind of a narrative that says that it's acceptable by the press, by the public, how do you get banks back to their purpose where they are financing the economy and not gambling?
Oh, it's not going to change with the two-headed one-party system that we have in place. Look where they get their campaign financing from. Or I actually should use the proper language. Who gives them the bribes and payoffs to do what they want them to do? It's the big corporations, the big banks, big agriculture, big farmer. So nothing is going to change in this country. Not until, I believe, we have a direct democracy system where the people vote on major issues. If you were to put up bailing out the banks in the TARP program in 2008 and put it up for a referendum among the American people, it would have failed, hands down. But instead, they push it through. So nothing is going to change. And by the way, nothing is really going to change, I believe, until the people change. And when the people have the courage, dignity, respect, and integrity to live the lives that they believe they should be living, they won't take this baloney from clowns like these bankers and their two-bit shows that they put on TV.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen how that'll all shake out across the Western world, too, in countries like Greece and in other indebted nations. We didn't quite get to those because there was so much to get to with this whole Jamie Dimon fiasco. I also thought it was funny, him talking in the Meet the Press interview about how Washington and Wall Street needs to work together, like it's a good thing compared to the way that, you know, that you've painted it, that a lot of those issues I agree with you on. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's always a real pleasure. That was Gerald Celente, founder of Trends Research Institute and publisher of the Trends Journal.